Good afternoon. We will be starting this webinar shortly, and good morning if you're on the West Coast. I know we have a few folks joining us from there as well. Today, we'll be going through a few housekeeping items before we start our webinar. First, we want this to be very interactive, and so we welcome the opportunity for you to send us your questions and comments. You can use that through the feature on your screen. We ask that you put your questions in the questions feature, and we'll be sharing some of the links that we're discussing today in the chat feature. We are offering closed captioning and Zoom technical support. We also are asking that you please consider sharing your feedback with us. Your input will help us to provide new topics and better informed webinars in the future. So please do fill out the feedback form and we'll put that in the chat box for you. This is the beginning of what we hope is a relationship and extended conversation. We want you to be a part of our community and help you to be successful. Please consider following us on Twitter. We will put that link in the chat, as well as LinkedIn. If you could do that, we would greatly appreciate it. And now we have the great pleasure of welcoming you to our National Institute on Aging Small Business Seed Fund, leveraging SBIR SETR funding for healthy innovations. Today, we hope to welcome our partners and give you a really strong overview of the program so that you can be a successful applicant, as well as share additional opportunities and resources that can help you not only get into the program, but bring your product to the commercialization stage. We will have a moderated Q&A, so you can use that Q&A feature all throughout the webinar. We will be sharing responses to your questions at the end. Please note that we may consolidate some questions that are very similar. So if you don't hear your exact question, that's why. And we are recording this webinar and we will be sharing the slides with you. So you don't have to copy down every note. And we'll also have the chat where you can look at some of the links we're discussing. With that, I want to welcome our featured speakers and also thank our partners. Today, you'll be hearing from Dr. Saroj Regmi, who is a Senior Program Analyst at the Office of Small Business Research at the National Institute on Aging, which is part of the National Institutes on Health. Debbie Hart, she is the President and CEO of BioNJ, as well as Michael Fleming. He is the President of Delaware Bio. And I'll be your moderator, Monique Laroque. With that, Michael Fleming, I welcome you to our webinar. Thank you for being an excellent co-host.
Thank you very much, Monique, and good afternoon, everyone. Thanks also to Saros and his team at NIA and the Office of Small Business Research and the team at Ogilvy that helped put everything together today. In addition to being the home of the next president of the United States, Delaware is very proud also of our deep heritage of scientific innovation, which must be one of the deepest in the country, going back 2 centuries with the founding of the DuPont Company on the banks of the Brandywine River here. Today, the sector accounts for about 16,000 jobs total in our very small state of under 1 million people. Half of those are directly involved in producing innovation across pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, research and testing companies. We have medical device and equipment manufacturers, hospitals and academic institutions, all of which, of course, have benefited greatly from the NIH grants that we're going to be discussing this afternoon. We're also very proud, specifically, that many Delaware companies of all sizes, from global leaders to local startups, are really on the forefront of developing vaccines, medicines, testing devices, and personal protective gear that will hopefully help end this pandemic that we're all unfortunately living through. If we could do the next slide, please. Our organization, Delaware Bio, is focused on supporting and nurturing this really dynamic community. And we do that through a core focus on 3 areas. One is serving and supporting our member needs, and that includes both bioscience companies as well as a lot of businesses that provide critical services to them. We host events that showcase industry innovation and bring our members together. We communicate a lot around the extraordinary public health and economic benefit and value of of our industry and our members. And of course, we also advocate and create an environment where innovation and investment can continue to thrive. One of the things we're super fortunate around is being part of the best region in the country, we believe, for bioscience innovation. And that includes the tri-state area of New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And we're very delighted this morning to be partnering with Debbie Hart and her team at BioNJ in hosting this important webinar. Debbie has been such a terrific national leader in our industry, and personally a great supporter and mentor of mine since I joined Delaware Bio in June. And so, Debbie, I'd like to hand it over to you to say a few words about your great organization. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And it's just wonderful to partner with you on anything, anytime. So, and congratulations on the president, by the way. So at BioNJ, we are thrilled to be hosting this session along with so many other partners, and we thank each and every one of our partners who are helping to bring this to light today. I know we have a tremendous gathering of people from across the country, and so we welcome you. So next slide, please. So just very briefly on the New Jersey ecosystem, as Michael said, we're a very strong region, and when you add New York to the mix, it just gets that much stronger even. So New Jersey specifically represents about $47.5 billion in economic activity, with about 3,300 life sciences companies, with many of the top R&D companies in the world. We have a total of about 430,000 direct, indirect, induced jobs. And the industry, the region accounts for about 60% of the industry jobs in the region. 27,000 life sciences graduates each and every year. New Jersey is the home to more scientists and engineers per square mile than anywhere else in the world. We, companies in New Jersey with a footprint in New Jersey, are responsible for more than 50% of all novel FDA drug approvals last year alone. More than 25% of all cell and gene therapies are in development right here in New Jersey. And I'm so proud of the work that the industry globally is doing in terms of COVID. It's so important, obviously. And so there are more than 500 companies working on more than 770 programs, whether vaccines, therapeutics, or testing. And more than 70 of those companies are based right here in New Jersey. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Rutgers University, who led the way on the first saliva test for COVID earlier this year. Next slide, please. So all of this, at BioNJ, we're very proud of the region clearly and our state specifically. And it all goes to our mission at BioNJ. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure that New Jersey and the surrounding region is a robust life sciences ecosystem where innovation is supported and thriving, and then that patients can access this innovation. So that speaks directly to our conversation today and what we are all anxious to hear about from our partners. And I do hope that you enjoy the conversation, and thank you for some time this afternoon, depending on where you are. So back to you, Monique.
Thank you. I appreciate your collaboration. We'll now hear from Dr. Saroj Regmi of the National Institute on Aging Office of Small Business Research.
Thank you very much, Monique. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for making it to this talk. I hope you'll find the overview of the program helpful and that you will consider applying. Next slide, please. So the SBIR and STTR are congressionally mandated programs. Each year, federal agencies that have an extramural research and development budgets that exceed 100 million are required to spend a certain percentage of that money on small businesses. For SBIR, that is 3.2%, and for STTR, that is 0.45%. I'll talk about the differences of both in a minute. Next slide. So there are clear advantages to seeking SBIR, STTR funding. It provides seed funding for innovative technology development. So it is very useful for small businesses to get that initial funding so that they reach a key inflection point and can attract external investors such as angels or venture capitalists. It is not a loan, so you do not need to pay back anything. and it is non-dilutive, so there's no repayment required. There's no impact on stocks, shares, or royalties as well. And what's great is that small businesses retain all IP rights, so you're not signing away any rights by taking the funding. Also, if you successfully manage to get funding by going through the rigorous peer review process at NIH, you get recognition, verification, and visibility. A lot of SBIR funded companies have made meaningful strides in terms of technology and commercialization. And because of that, SBIR funding also allows you to attract additional funding or support. Next slide, please. Thank you. So now let's talk about eligibility. One thing that I want to highlight is that SBIR, STTR awards are not awarded to people, but to small businesses. So you have to meet the US Small Business Administration's definition of a small business. The organization must be for-profit US business and have 500 or fewer employees. In reality, most of the applying small businesses have employees ranging from 2 to 50. It is rare that we fund companies with hundreds of employees. Given that we're a government organization, the company must be mostly owned by US individuals or companies and must be independently operated. In case of multiple venture capital operating companies, no single VC firm can own more than 50%. So if it's a syndicate that owns 50% together, then they're eligible. Next slide, please. Yeah. So there are key differences between SBIR and STTR program. The name kind of gives it away. SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. So it is an award to a small business that conducts innovative research. STTR stands for Small Business Technology Transfer. So it is an award to small business so that they can collaborate with a nonprofit research institute, such as a university, for technology transfer. So there's an IP agreement providing necessary IP rights to the small business to carry out follow-on R&D and commercialization. SBIR does permit collaboration with research institution partners, while STTR requires it. So that's a really key difference. In case of SBIR, 2/3 of the planned activities over the course of funding must be conducted at the small business. Meanwhile, this is at 50% for phase 2 grants. In case of STTR, at least 40% is done at small business and 30% by the partner institute. There's also a strict PD-PI, PD meaning program director, PI meaning principal investigator requirement. For SBIR, PD-PI must be primarily employed meaning greater than 50% by the small business. For STTR, there is no such requirement, but the PI needs to spend at least 10% of the effort on the project. Next slide, please. So Congress has divided the funding mechanisms in distinct phases, and it is important to note that this is very different from the phases of clinical research. Most of the SBIR, STTR funding is for clinical research. Phase 1 is for discovery and feasibility. So it's up to a year. The awards are up to $300,000 for general applications. And if your technology or product is specific for Alzheimer's disease or the related dementia, which we call AD-ADRD, this can go for up to $500,000. Phase 2 is for 2 years and is for full research and development after successful completion of the feasibility studies at phase 1. These awards are up to $2 million and $2.5 million for AD-ADRD. An important distinction is that for phase 2, you require a commercialization plan. Now, there are also mechanisms available if you'd like to combine the phase 1 and the phase 2 without the gap. The idea is that you submit specific aims for both phase 1 and phase 2. And at the end of phase 1, you're evaluated on whether you met the milestones that you proposed earlier or not. This means that there's no gap between the funding between phase 1 and phase 2, and you don't have to write a separate application. And that's essentially fast track for you. There's also a direct to phase 2 funding mechanism for SBIR awards only. The idea is that if you've already done feasibility studies using other funds, you can come in and apply for these. And you can also apply for what is called a commercialization readiness pilot, CRP, which is funding for late stage R&D and technical assistance for commercialization. And finally, you can apply to phase 2B, which is a competing renewal. This is for 3 years, and you can get awards up to $3 million. So if you start out in the beginning from a phase 1 all the way down to phase 2B, you're looking at around $8 million, which is a rather significant amount of money to start your business. Next slide. So as far as the budget is concerned, SBIR budgets are defined by total costs. Your total cost should not exceed the requirement that I talked about earlier. And so subcontracting is limited because for an SBIR, as I alluded to earlier, 2/3 of the research and development needs to be done in-house. So it's important that you know the rules and criteria and you check budget allowance in each funding opportunity. For each application, you can request a 7% fee, which is your profit. There are no strict rules about how and what the money is spent on. So we definitely recommend that you apply for that since that'll be part of your profit. And it's really important for you to note that CRO type activities, CRO meaning contract research organization, when you contract out part of your research to an organization, they count as small business cost provided these 3 things. First, that it's a commercially available service. Second, that all the analysis is being done by the small business. And third, that it is a fee per basis. So there's no indirect costs by fee for service providers. Next slide. This figure here does a really good job of providing you with a snapshot of what our office, the NIA Office of Small Business, does. Number 1, central coordination. We help administer all SBIR and STTR awards at NIA. Guidance. We also help you with the application. We discuss various funding opportunities and we're available for any questions you may have about the application. Outreach. We attend conferences and we organize workshops such as this one to let you know about the program. Funding. We identify emerging technologies and develop really targeted funding opportunities. And we hope to launch a couple of new ones over the next couple of years. Networking, we talk regularly to various stakeholders, whether it be nonprofits or investors or large pharma, and try to facilitate connections between our awardees and these strategic partners. And we also engage in entrepreneurship. So we provide entrepreneurship training as well as webinars. And we have a dedicated entrepreneur in residence, Dr. Don Rose, who works part-time also as an advisor at a VC firm. And he provides guidance and pitch coaching for NIA-funded companies. Next slide. So the applicants have a lot of resources at their disposal. If you're a first-time and never funded applicant, you can apply to what is called an AAP, Applicant Assistant Program. This is a 10-week coaching program to help you develop your application. And this is offered once each standard funding period. All the other awardees, they have access to what is called a Technical and Business Assistance Program called TABA, which is for our awardees, which provides funding of around $6,500 for phase 1 and $50,000 for phase 2 when requested in the grant application. For some of the phase 1 awardees, you can also request what is called a needs assessment, which I'll talk about in a minute. There's also a diversity supplement, which the idea of which is to help increase the diversity of research workforce. We want to support students, postdoc, as well as eligible investigators from underrepresented groups. And there are 2 wonderful training programs, the I-Core program and the C3I program, that provide entrepreneurial training. C3I is specifically for medical device, while I-Core is a broad program that focuses on customer discovery in life sciences and biotechnology. And lastly, there's also SEED resource. So there's a dedicated office at NIH called Small Business Entrepreneurial Education and Development Office, which provides regulatory support as well as EIR support. And they're available for consults for our NIH-funded companies. Next slide. So as I alluded to earlier, phase 1 awardees can request what is called a needs assessment report, which provides a third-party unbiased assessment of progress in 10 technical business areas that are critical to market success. The goal is to help identify these small businesses that are rather at the early stage funding and for them to identify their pressing product development needs. These are available on a rolling basis. So if you've had a phase 1 award from us, please consider applying to this. All active phase 1 SBIR, STTR grants or contracts within the past 2 years are eligible to apply. Next slide. So the NEED Assistant, NIH Applicant Assistance Program, as I said earlier, is a 10-week coaching program that is designed to assist small businesses in preparing a phase 1 application for the Small Business Innovation Research and Small Business Technology Transfer Program. It has 3 application periods within a year, and the next one is due on May 2021. Next slide. More about the eligibility and process. So basically the simple criteria is that you have not received any award from us prior to 2010. We're interested in helping you develop an application. And this is, while this is not a requirement, we're interested in applicants who are currently underrepresented in the life sciences. So focusing on women-owned small businesses, minority-owned small businesses, and small businesses operating in underrepresented states that receive a little NIH funding. Next slide. So at the NIA, the National Institute on Aging, the SBIR and STTR seeks innovative solutions to various unmet clinical needs and solutions that have a really significant potential for commercialization. These projects leverage the expertise of the company or the founder and produce feasibility data in case of phase 1 and work towards a product-focused development activities in phase 2. Given that NIA's main focal area is Alzheimer's disease, we make available up to $500,000 and $2.5 million for phase 1 and phase 2 respectively. These research focus on prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of AD, ADRD, Alzheimer's disease-related dementia, as well as care and caregiving tools, research and clinical tools, and digital health and novel devices. Next slide. So if you look at the timeline, there's between 5 to 12 months from when you apply to the time you get funding. So there can be a little gap. So you really need to consider that. And the process is quite straightforward. An applicant initiates research idea. They determine whether they're eligible. The company submits an application electronically, and this application is then assigned to NIH's Center for Scientific Review, which then identifies which IC should be assigned the application. This takes a couple of months. There's a scientific review group that evaluates merit. And in a couple of months, you have advisory council that recommends approval. And this is then submitted to IC staff, which prepare funding plan. And by the time IC allocates funding, it can take anywhere between 5 to 12 plus months. So you really need to think about applying ahead if you really need funds. And what's also important is you realize that there might be a lag. There might be a gap between phase 1 and phase 2. So you need to think about multiple sources of funding. Next slide. So if you look at the application cycle, there are 3 standard due dates: September 5th, April 5th, and January 5th. The review meetings happen a couple of months later, so November, June, and March. And then you have the advisory council review a couple of months later, and your earliest start date. So if you start out September 5th, your earliest start date is April. So again, just to reiterate the fact that there might be a gap between when you apply and when you actually get funding. So you need to be cognizant of that. Next slide. So the National Institute on Aging, Office of Small Business Research, we strategically fund innovations for Alzheimer's disease-related dementia, and age-related changes in cognitive function, as well as aging in place, age-related diseases, and conditions and research tools. We have a broad portfolio that includes therapeutics, almost a third. We have sensors and monitoring technologies, supportive devices, digital and mobile health, research tools, in vitro diagnostics, as well as imaging devices. So quite a broad portfolio for us. And we also have additional areas of interest in companion diagnostics, bioinformatics, public health informatics, novel cell and gene therapies, prevention therapeutics, different technologies, devices, and mobile applications that help older adults as well as caregivers, and also various analytical methods and tools and technologies that address health disparities among older adults. Next slide. So the funding opportunities available have been listed here. Please be cognizant of the budgets. The budget limits are really important for you to note. Omnibus, so FOA basically means funding opportunity announcement. So omnibus FOA just means applications that are not focused on Alzheimer's disease. And the budget limit of these are set by the NIH. And so these are set at $300,000 for phase 1 and $2 million for phase 2. For Alzheimer's disease and Alzheimer's disease related funding opportunities, we have $350,000 for lifespan related interventions and $500,000 for direct Alzheimer's disease related projects. And these are the PAA numbers that you can look up to know more about these funding opportunities. Next slide. And as I alluded to earlier, there's also the Commercial Readiness Pilot Program for which you can apply. The budget limits range anywhere from $300,000 up to $3.3 million for a total of 2 years. There are various supplements. So like I said before, there's the administrative supplement to promote diversity in research and development. And there's also the SBIR technology transfer supplement. On top of these funding opportunities, we also participate in additional funding opportunities that are available on our website at the link that has been posted. Next slide. And so if you already have a phase 2, you should really consider the Commercialization Readiness Pilot, CRP program. The great thing about these programs is that there are no subcontracting restriction. So you can spend as much money as you want for subcontracting part of your research. However, you really need to justify your subcontracting plan. It can be applied simultaneously, or it can be a follow-on to your phase 2 and phase 2B. And this is for both SBIR and STTR. And so these provide funding for activities that are not typically supported by research grants. Diversity Supplement Program, like I said before, these are administrative supplements to promote diversity in research and development small businesses. The goal being to improve the diversity of research workforce by recruiting and supporting students, postdoctorates, as well as eligible investigators from groups that have been shown to be underrepresented in health-related research or in the SBIR, STTR programs. The applications include identification of the candidate as well as a strong career development plan. And the deadline, there's no deadline. We accept applications on a rolling basis. Next slide. So this graph clearly illustrates the differences between an academic grant and the SBIR, STTR grant. The emphasis is on the same thing, the team, the approach, the innovation and the significance, as well as the environment. But the key difference is that the lens is rather different. For example, team is focused on discovery research for an academic grant, but the SBIR's focus is on research as well as commercial development. The innovation is a competitive advantage over pre-existing products. And commercialization is the key difference between these two grants, because the goal for an academic grant is, you increase the knowledge, you increase new discovery, but for an SBIR, STTR is you change the paradigm and you're able to commercialize a product. Next slide. So these are the main 6 review criteria. Significance, you want to see whether the product addresses an important problem and whether there's a commercialization potential. And you also have to identify whether there's a market for that proposed product. Approach, you want to know whether the design and the methods are well developed and whether they're appropriate. Are problem areas addressed, and if there are any potential pitfalls, and when there might be pitfalls, you really have to identify alternative approaches so that your end goal is still successful. Innovation is a really key aspect. How novel is the technology and product that is being proposed? And what is the competitive advantage? Why do we need to fund something if there's already a product in the market? What's the competitive advantage of this new product that is to be funded? There's also an emphasis on investigator, whether the investigators as well as the collaborator and the consultants, whether they're appropriately trained and whether they're capable of completing all the projected tasks. Environment is key, whether whether the scientific environment contributes to the probability of success, whether the facility has all the key equipment and things like that, and whether there's independence as well. And one key review criteria that I talked about earlier is whether the company's business strategy has a high potential for success, whether the product is can be commercialized. That is key. Next slide. So the most important aspect of the application is the specific aims page, which is a one-page document. So your one-page document is basically your executive summary, and it provides a first impression of what you are trying to do. So you want to divide it into two parts. The first half to the first 2/3 is basically your elevator pitch. You want to talk about the merits of your application. You want to talk about the technology prototype to be developed, the innovation, the value proposition, what's the competition, and you also want to show some preliminary data. I mean, while it's not a key requirement for you to have preliminary data, it does strengthen your application in a lot of cases. And lastly, you want to show why your technology or your product is relevant to the research and development. Why is it relevant to the mission of the National Institute on Aging? For the last 1/3 to a half of a page, you want to talk about your key models, your assays, and your metrics. And you also want to have really quantifiable milestones so that we can see whether there are quantitative performance milestones associated with your specific aims. Please provide your draft specific aims to us, to NIA staff for feedback. We'll gladly have a look at it and we'll give you feedback. We can also see whether your aims fit with the mission of NIA, and we can also give you really constructive feedback. Next slide. So the SF424 application guide is a great guide that you can use. It's like the encyclopedia of SBIR grants, and this comprehensively covers the applications and instructions. And now you can also use the NIH Assist to submit your application and review the annotated application form. So this makes the application process a little bit easier. The link is provided here, and we will be sharing these slides, so you'll have access to these links and the slides as well. Next slide. So the NIAID, National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease, has done a great job of compiling sample applications that successfully got NIH funding. And these are NIAID specific applications. They apply nevertheless to NIA, since the peer review process is pretty much the same across all the ICs at National Institute of Health. NIA is in the process of putting together NIA specific sample applications, and hopefully these will be available in the near future. But until then, you have really good sample applications that you can look at so that you get a better idea of a good application. Next slide. So if you go through the omnibus application, which is meant for all agencies at NIH, you can request that your application be assigned to a specific study section and a specific institute through this form. The link is provided here. So you can suggest also dual assignment if you think that your technology cuts across 2 institutes. The benefit is that now you're competing in a pool of applicants in 2 institutes, and you might make the cut in one of these 2 institutes. Next slide. And I cannot stress this enough. Research strategy is really important. You want to provide a detailed background information. You want to address all the review criteria. You want to provide a detailed technical plan to achieve the specific aims. You want to show that what you propose is doable within the time. So if it's a phase 1, you want to make sure you propose something that can be done within a year. If it's a phase 2, you have 2 years to complete your project. So you don't want to be overambitious. You want to describe potential pitfalls, and you also want to suggest alternative strategies in case your primary aims do not work. The approach section should be prioritized. Reviewers really tend to focus on the approach, so that is key. Next slide. Letters of support are really, really important. They're necessary from consultants and collaborators. What's key is that, if you have letters of support from clinicians, end users, and investors that are not on the application, those are really, really powerful. And that's because these folks don't have a commercial interest in your application. And these letters basically speak for the need to commercialize your product. So they really are powerful. For phase 2, you need a commercialization plan, which is 12 pages. You need biosketches for all senior and key personnel. And you also want to have budgets for each pay period and for each subcontract. You need a detailed description of facilities and equipment that you have in order to complete the project. And if applicable, you need a human subject research section and vertebrate animal section. Next slide. If you weren't funded on the first try, please don't be disheartened. I think, going through the process, you'll get valuable feedback just by applying. And you can use that summary statement, which is basically a collection of written critiques to improve your application. We found that resubmissions almost double the success rate, so resubmissions are definitely worth it. Next slide. So these are some of the great application resources that are available to you. We have sample SBIR grant applications from NIA. There's an annotated form set for NIH grant application. There are infographics. There's also, link to our website. And you can also look at this database of NIH supported research at NIH Reporter. And if you go on NIH Matchmaker, you can look at similar projects and program staff. So that way you can already see what kind of research has been funded prior by each of the IC. And there are also these NIA supported animal model resources that might be of use to you for Alzheimer's disease preclinical efficacy database and the Model Alzheimer's Disease Consortium, which is focused on developing next generation animal models for Alzheimer's. So, I think the key really is, there are 3 key takeaways from today's talk. First, SBIR, STTR are a great way to do feasibility studies, so please consider applying. You not only get money for feasibility studies, but you also get support from entrepreneurs in residence, you get training, and you also have us to help you with the next steps. Number 2, write a 1-pager and come talk to us. We can tell you about the fit, which funding opportunity pursue, and we can also help you answer any questions you may have. The application process is rather similar to academic grants, so we know that it can be quite cumbersome, and we're here to provide you with any guidance and demystify the process. Don't get disappointed if you don't make it on the first try. Feedback from peer review process really helps you strengthen the application and also helps you think about your product a little better, and it definitely increases your chances. So please connect with us on Twitter, on LinkedIn, check out our website, join our mailing list, and if you have any questions, please email us. With that, I thank you very much for sticking around. We appreciate any feedback you may have. Now I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that presentation. We have been collecting many of your questions. Thank you so much for all of you who have been active participants. I just want to reiterate a couple things. One is please do fill out the feedback form and join our LinkedIn and Twitter communities. If you still have questions or if clarifying things come up as we go through the question and answer period, feel free to put that in the Q&A. And we will be making the slides available as Dr. Regmi mentioned, and we'll be sending a thank you email as well. So look out for that, which will have many of the links we discussed today. With that, I'll move into as many questions as we can get to during this session. But the first one that I wanted to help get through is one, people would like to know, is their IP protected? And is it possible that it can be shared externally when they apply for the program? And Saroj, if you would help answer that question.
Sorry, what was the question again?
How well protected is a potential IP when someone submits their application? They'll likely be sharing information that may not be published as of yet, but they want to provide the most information to have a robust application. So what guidance do you have to our applicants who are concerned about IP?
Yeah, I think, I think it is important for you to, talk to your lawyer before applying because, reviewers do sign confidentiality agreements. So, that way, you can protect your IP, but, I think it is a good idea generally to talk to someone before you apply.
Thank you. And I will note that the NIA SBR team will be having a series of entrepreneurship sessions coming up in 2021 that will also help cover items related to IP if you all need help in figuring out how to do that. But as Dr. Regmi mentioned, all of our reviews do sign a NDA and not to disclose. Okay. For the SETR, can you please explain the IP agreement for small businesses to continue the work? They are trying to get more clarification on that slide.
So the idea of SETR is, if you could go back to the SBR SETR slides, I think that would.
We will do that.
Yep, thank you. So the idea is basically, you collaborate with the research institute partners, and you collaborate. A lot of the times these are universities. You collaborate and you do 40% of your work at your small profit business, but then you can also do 30% of your work at a nonprofit institute, and you have an IP agreement saying that initially the IP rights is later provided to small business to carry out follow-on R&D and commercialization. So the idea is that you have a product that starts out at a university or research institute, and you spin off based off of that and based off of the STTR funding.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask a series of questions that relate to the application process itself and how people organize their teams and applications. So do most applicants include a PI that has a PhD, and is that required?
Most do, but not all. I mean, PIs need to show that they have the expertise to lead the project. And in a lot of these cases, that means a PhD is a requirement. But we also have a lot of software developers and things that have and people that have expertise in various other fields. And so PhD is not always a requirement. Thank you.
Thank you. If someone submits an application and it is not funded, is it okay to submit a brand new application under the same FOA, or does it have to be a resubmission?
So resubmissions have a higher probability of funding. So, we suggest that a resubmission is suggested. But, for a phase 1 or a direct to phase 2, you're encouraged to discuss with the assigned program officer. Each applicant can submit resubmission for one time that address reviewer comments, and additional applications must be a new submission. So, we definitely recommend that you, resubmit once instead of applying it as a new application.
Thank you. Is it better in terms of a higher success rate for the first-time applicants to do a phase 1 application? Also, what is the average or general success rate?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, so generally, we have seen that getting a phase 1 first is often your best bet because it also tells us about your history. So if you're a first-time applicant, it might be best for you to start out as a phase 1 awardee. Success rates can range, but typically they're in the range of somewhere between 10 to 20%, roughly 15% for phase 1. They could be higher for phase 2 since those went through a previous round of review. They've already acquired a phase 1. So, the success rate for phase 2s are generally higher.
Excellent, thank you. And I should note, if you're thinking about developing an application, we have shared the links to our contacts and we'll put that up again, but it's generally a good idea to speak with someone from the team to help make sure that you are able to ask questions about whether your research area of interest is a right fit. And if you have to resubmit, it's a very good idea to speak to your program officer. The next question is there a benefit to seeking assistance from the SBIR or SETR agencies of our states first?
Yes, definitely. I think, states often have resources to assist in the application preparation. So, I would definitely recommend checking it out.
Thank you. And I have seen some states that they have matching programs as well. So there are maybe also, in addition to looking at the federal resources, additional resources at the state level. Is NIA interested in aging-related diseases in all organs, meaning the heart, kidney, or is the interest only in the brain?
That's another great question. So NIA, being National Institute on Aging, we are disease agnostic, but we really encourage you to talk to us, contact us, and we can always discuss fit. We're not definitely limited to the brain, but we focus on projects that address aging-related processes. So targeting a disease that generally occurs in older adults may be a better fit sometimes for an IC that focuses on a certain disease. So definitely contact us, reach out to us, and we'll be able to answer that on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. And to elaborate on that question, can you share some of the other areas of interest that NIA is supporting?
Yeah, so enhanced healthy aging, geroscience, aging in place solutions, social isolation, frailty, different diagnostic devices, things like that.
Thank you. Would NIA be interested in a platform technology that can deconvolute therapeutic targets in aging organs? And is it okay to focus on just one aging organ for an SBIR phase 1?
Yes, definitely. Please send us the AIMS page and we can definitely discuss and talk about it further.
Thank you. Can a small business in areas other than medical health be covered? And if yes, what are those areas?
We often fund engineers, behavioral researchers, et cetera, if they're covering an area that can improve health of older adults. I mean, that being key here. Thanks.
Thank you. And I know that you all have collaborated with NINDS in the past. How do the areas of focus differ for you between NIA and NINDS? And with that, if I'm focused on pain research, where should I apply?
Yeah, I think that again depends on a case-by-case basis. We collaborate with NINDS on Alzheimer's disease. For some other diseases such as Parkinson's, NINDS may be a better fit. But for general approaches to pain overall, NINDS may be a better fit. But if it is specific to older patients, older adults, I think that might be a fit for as well. Again, the key here is if you have specific questions about fit, please reach out to us. We're happy to discuss, and we'll either talk to you ourselves or we'll forward your specific AIMS page to our colleagues at NINDS and other ICs.
Thank you. And another institute that may have overlap is NHLBI, and there was another question as to whether NIA would fund drugs for heart attack or heart failure.
So typically for these, NHLBI would be the appropriate institute. But in the past, we have funded a small number of related projects that focus specifically on aging-related pathologies of the heart. So again, this would again be on a case-by-case basis. But overall, I think NHLBI is more focused on heart attack.
Thank you. So we have someone who's interested and wants to know, how do they get started? What's the first step, and can they be assigned a mentor?
Yeah, great question. So, if you go on sbir.nih.gov/infographic, you'll get a nice infographic on the steps and the process. And what we definitely recommend is you apply to the applicant assistance program, the 10-week long program that I talked about. I think, that would be really useful. And, you look at assist as well. I think these would really help you out for the first initial step.
Thank you. We just had a deadline close for AAP, but they open up regularly and have rolling deadlines, usually aligned to when the applications are due. So this December's application is focused on helping to prepare for the April deadline. However, it's still a good time to get started. We will be sharing a link to our fact sheet. One thing you can also do is at least get started on some of the registrations that are required. sometimes that can take some time to get set up for your business. And we will also be sharing our contact information if you'd like to connect. Okay. What is the best approach for small businesses which are interested in service-driven care model innovation rather than product or technology innovation?
Yeah, I think that again is a a broad brush. So I think come talk to us with your one-page specific aims, and we can definitely give you feedback based on that.
Thank you. And when applying for an STTR, should the PI be from a university, from the small business? Can they be interchangeable?
Yeah, so generally for the STTR, the PI is from a university, but they don't have to be. So you can have multiple PIs, one from the university and one from the small business that we see a lot of as well. Thanks.
Thank you. So we got a few questions on the review process. For small biotechs, is there any flexibility about the 30% requirement to do the work in-house? We outsource wet lab work.
Yeah, so I think the critical key is how the subcontracts are defined. So fee-for-service activities can count as direct cost of small business. And so this is something we can discuss once you send us your aims. We can definitely have a conversation about that.
Thank you. And I will note, we'll chat out the link to our review webinar that we did. We did a mock review where we walk through what are some of the common issues that come up during the review process. And we went through 2 sample applications. It's a webinar we have posted on the NIA SBIR website, which you might find useful. In this situation, the participant is noting that they got good feedback on the significance and innovation and environment, but their overall score was low. What resources can they use to enhance their grant application?
So this could be, a case of, grantmanship or missing details. So I think, you will really benefit from discussing with the program officer. They'll be able to tell you, what you can do to improve. And again, this is there might be a specific scenario. So, you definitely need to talk to us and discuss things with program officers.
Thank you. A participant is commenting on the success rate and wants to know the breakdown in terms of number of applicants and number of awards in a typical cycle in a typical year.
Ooh, okay, so the numbers fluctuate on a year-by-year basis, and this can vary based on scientific area. But it is true that given the fact that the success rate almost doubles when you apply again. When you resubmit, most applicants do need to resubmit before being funded.
That's an excellent point. So don't take the first failure as the end. If you had some good input in there and you believe in your technology, please meet with the program officer to discuss how to resubmit and make it a stronger application. How does one get around a particular reviewer who doesn't believe in the commercializability and some of the evidence presented? What should someone do?
Yeah, so this can happen sometimes. And I think, in this case, it's best, again, to discuss your specific case with the program officer and see, what avenues you can pursue. Yeah.
We have someone who has been an awardee in the past. They received a phase 1 and they successfully completed the clinical study. It's been about 3 years since that has occurred. Has there been too much time to apply for a phase 2? Or should they do a fast track?
Yeah, they could consider doing a fast track. Yeah, I think, I don't exactly remember how many years after you can apply for a phase 2, but I think 3 years might be a bit too much. So yeah, they might consider fast track.
Yes, and if you want to discuss your specific case with us, please reach out to us via the email we provided. A couple of questions related to eligibility. So are non-citizen scientists who are working in the US eligible for NIH small business funding?
So they should be, citizens or permanent residents. Given that it's, we are a U.S. government institution, we mostly fund, small businesses, either from citizens or permanent residents.
Thank you. Can a small business have two co-PIs, which account for 51% employment by the small businesses at the time of this SBIR funding?
No. So the idea is that one PI must be majority, employed by the small business. So you need to have one PI who has more than 50% employment at the small business at the time of the award for the SBIR.
Thank you. And what if there's a need to replace that PI during the funding period? Is that possible?
This can be done on a case-by-case basis. Again, the awards, the SBIR awards are awarded to the small business. So, there might be scenarios when, you might need to replace the PI, but, this is considered on a case-by-case basis if the small business can demonstrate equivalent relevant expertise.
Thank you. Do you have any advice for companies which are more virtual and don't have a strong PI who is employed by the company?
So, I think one key takeaway from today's talk is definitely that partnerships and collaborations are really important. So you can really partner with someone and you can really, forge collaborations. You can, have a small business with multiple PIs. You can think about SBIR versus STTRs depending on, these things. So yeah, I'd focus on partnerships and collaborations.
Thank you. And I do note there's some very specific reviewer questions coming through. We would like to encourage you to discuss those with the PO and see how we can help you. Is funding available for a startup which is in market for just about a year?
Yes, so SBIR stands for Small Business Innovation Research. So if there is further innovation is required, if you're developing something that is different than what you already have, if innovation is an important aspect of what you're trying to achieve, then we can fund it if there is further innovation.
Thank you. Would you recommend the SBIR pathway if most of the work will be performed at a CRO?
Yeah, that's a tricky one because this could be, but some work must still be done by small business. So this can be discussed on a case-by-case basis. But in general, there's a strict requirement that 2/3 of the work is done by the small business, and how CROs are viewed can depend on a case-by-case basis. So please talk to us.
Thank you. We're getting some questions about resources available for entrepreneurial resources for small businesses. And I want to note that we actually have on our website resources for applicants and resources for awardees. And those range from funded programs to technical assistance to research databases that the NIA has made available. And as I mentioned, in 2021, we will be kicking off an entrepreneurship series covering a variety of topics from patent to reimbursement to how to set up your company. So keep a lookout for that. And if you join this webinar, we'll be reaching out to send out invitations for that series. What percentage of applicants to the application assistance program are accepted?
You mean to the AAP? What's the percentage of it?
Yes.
I think so. This fluctuates year to year. So I think nowadays we've seen even the AAP program is really competitive, but I think it ranges anywhere between 10 to 25%.
Okay. And I want to note we are coming up on the end of the webinar, but we'll take maybe 5 or so more questions and we'll try to consolidate a few. So this person has attended STTR webinars and is on the mailing list. They would like to know where they can find the webinar recordings. I'm just going to note that those are on the website. So if you go to our SBIR events, you can find them. There also should be a thank you email with slides that is shared with all of you. We will also chat out a link to our archived webinars. Is there a guide for a reasonable budget range for the expertise on salaries or even how to submit a budget for this type of application?
Yes. So I think you need to discuss that with us. I think, there's no specific guide that's available. So, come talk to us and we can talk about it.
And should first-time applicants write in health insurance for staff if it's their primary employment?
Yeah, I think that can be included as part of the budget, but you need to, that should be, that should still fall between the overall budget that is allowed, but health insurance is definitely can be a part of the budget for an employee.
Thank you. And then we're going to speak to Jess in the last few minutes, a few specific programs for CRP, the Commercialization Research Program. Is that competitive?
Yes, it is. It is competitive. So you need to apply. You can apply it either as when you apply your phase 2 or phase 2B, and yeah, it is competitive.
Thank you. And can you share a little bit more about TABA? Is it counted in the total fund requested? And also, I know that there's some new features for TABA that folks can get reports. Can you please share more information about that?
Yeah, so essentially as of now, I guess you can say that there are 3 different forms of TABA. So if you're a phase 1 company who's applying, you can apply for $6,500 extra in your budget, which will be part of your technical and business assistance. Or, after you received a phase 1 award, you can apply for, in lieu of, if you forego the $6,500, you can apply for what is called a needs assessment report, which provides a third-party unbiased assessment of progress in key technical areas. And we recommend that you actually apply for the needs assessment report, because I think you get a lot more out of this than with $6,500. So that's for phase 1 awardees. If you have a phase 2 award, you can request up to $50,000. And this can be above budget limits. So, we definitely recommend that you apply to the needs assessment for phase 1. And, for phase 2, like I said, $50,000 above the budget limit.
Thank you. Are the success rates different for SBIR versus STTR? Do you have any recommendations on where someone could apply if they're eligible to apply to both?
So again, I think these change on a year-to-year basis. So so I think, if you have a competitive application, you would get funded, whether it would be an SBIR or STTR. The key important thing to note, of course, is the differences. The different requirements for SBIR versus STTR, and to see which fits your application better.
Thank you. And the last 2 questions relate to diversity and cultural sensitivity. So does a cultural telehealth solution for Latino populations and serving aging qualify?
It can, if innovation is involved. If there's something that that has innovation as part of its application, it can be. Please send us your aims and we can discuss that.
And for the diversity supplement, is it only available to SBIR awardees, or can a new applicant that is filing a new application apply?
So in order to get the diversity supplement, you have to be an awardee, but you can and you will be encouraged to include diverse candidates on your research team, when you apply as well.
Thank you. And I saw that there were some questions about, how to access state resources. We actually have 2 great state resources here with Delaware and New Jersey Bio. And oftentimes, if you're not from these 2 states, you can contact your state bio. They often have a list of state-specific resources available to biotechs. With that, I want to thank our partners, Delaware and from Delaware and New Jersey. We appreciate your collaboration, and Debbie and Michael, as well as Dr. Regmi, we are here to help you succeed, and we've shared our contact information. We hope that you'll consider using it and discussing your area of research interest. We hope that you'll consider applying, or at least signing up to learn more about the SBIR program at NIA. We will be sending out some links as we noted, and you can look to our website to see some of our archive webinars. We've chatted out that link. Please do fill out the feedback form, and we want to thank you again for being a participant with us today. Have a wonderful and happy holiday.